No. Who's doing that? Don't do that. Snickerdoodle is in the house, and Alan and Django are a little upset. So, same standards. They're real journalists. And hi, Snickerdoodle. I'm sorry about that. So, I'm sorry, guys. I'm gonna have to start this video over. I have to start it over because of you. Because I can't talk about professionalism and have cats. Although I'm not a professional. I'm just a shit talker. Hello, everyone. I'm Dawn. Welcome to my channel, and thank you for visiting with me today. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to my channel, The Cutting Board. We do all kinds of things here. We do true crime content, commentary, vlogs, hauls, sometimes reaction, food content, SFX makeup, regular makeup, DIY, and most importantly, at least to me, Disney content. So, excuse me, on this channel, we recently discussed this topic in another video, but it was just an introduction to what's coming up.
The Poop That Took a Pee. Chapter 1. Douglas had to poop.
Today, we're diving into a topic it's caused some discussion among the social media. It's a self-published book called Cawing Out Truth, a true crime memoir roast of my time to stand as retold by the people she forgot to mention, creating a narrative, the lies and manipulations behind the villainization and erasure of Dee Dee Blanchard, written by Fancy Macelli and Amy Mackey. Poor Amy. Fancy's real name, by the way, is April Johns, for anyone that doesn't know. But I want to touch on something immediately right here. So it's Cawing Out Truth. It's supposed to be Cawing Out the Truth. She couldn't get the cover right. But a true crime memoir roast of my time to stand as retold by the people she forgot to mention. Who's she supposed to be? Who is she? Like, yes, the audience knows who she is, but you have to imagine that they don't. So that is just something that bugged me, because I learned that actually in journalism of all places. Now, what do I know? I'm dumb. So, yeah, that's whatever. But before we get started, I want to be clear, okay? This isn't about gossip or personal attacks. It's about accountability, ethics, and professionalism. Excuse me, guys. I'm so sorry. And like someone said, I was judgmental in one video, in the last video when I was talking about this. And this isn't being judgmental. This is critiquing someone that fancies themselves an investigative author. So when someone publicly calls themselves a truth teller or a member of the media or an investigative author, they should be held to the same standards that real journalists and professionals follow. So I've worked in compliance and privacy for more than a decade. So ethics and responsible communication are second nature to me. When I see someone mishandling private information, exploiting victims, or blaming everyone else for their own mistakes, I feel obligated to speak up. And if you have a problem with that, I don't know what to tell you. My awareness of April Johns started long before this book. I came across her content while researching various aspects of the Gypsy Rose Blanchard case. And what disturbed me most It wasn't her opinions, because that's what they are. They're just opinions. They're not journalistic. It was her complete disregard for ethics. She discussed Gypsy Rose's PHI, her protected health information, private medical information, publicly, even placing portions of it behind a paywall. Now, let me be clear. I am not a supporter of Gypsy Rose. I'm not a supporter of Gypsy Rose Blanchard, not at all. But this isn't about defending Gypsy. It's about holding April Johns accountable for the way she manipulates the narrative around this case, particularly. Her constant excuses, her lack of professionalism, and her blatant disregard for ethics don't just make her look bad, they damage the credibility of everyone in the true crime and advocacy communities who's actually trying to handle these stories with respect and truth. It's not credible. When someone behaves this irresponsibly under the banner of justice or truth-telling, they dilute the entire message. They make it harder for legitimate voices, survivors, advocates, and journalists, as well as content creators who are being respectful, to be taken seriously. That's why this matters, because ethics aren't just about one person's reputation. They affect the entire conversation. But ethics don't disappear just because we dislike someone. Oh, I don't like Gypsy, so I don't need to be ethical. It doesn't work that way. That's complete nonsense. When you handle sensitive material, especially PHI, medical records, you're expected to uphold integrity. I don't care whose medical records they are. From the moment I saw how April handled that information, it was clear she didn't understand what ethical responsibility really means. Or maybe she did understand it and just didn't care. But either way, she needs some education. That same disregard shows up again in Cawing Out the Truth. April Johns has stated that Gypsy Rose Blanchard's stepmother, Christy, who she calls Krusty, which is just, I don't get it, gave her access to Gypsy's medical records. This was when they had the contract for all the fantastical things April said that she was going to be able to do for them. They had a signed life rights option agreement. I'm so sorry about the coffin. Which is a contract between a real person and a producer, writer, or studio that gives the buyer the right to develop, dramatize, or adapt that person's life story into a book, film, or series. So April wanted Gypsy to make money off of her crime back then, but now she wants to fight for Dee Dee's law, so she can't make money off of that. She wants Dee Dee's law passed. And she might have you thinking that's because she has seen the light, but no, it's not. It's not. It's because they got rid of her. They dumped her. You know, once they realized that she wasn't going to deliver on her end of the deal, they dropped her. Once they realized she was full of it. Of course, the contract doesn't guarantee any of that stuff would actually happen. But she talked a big game. And one of her earlier books, which is just the transcripts from her podcast, and it's terrible. They tear Dee Dee apart. But now she wants to pull this whole justice for Dee Dee routine. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm not buying it. And Dee Dee's law basically is the same thing as the Son of Sam law. And even if it was to be passed, which is almost impossible to do, and we're going to discuss that in another video, even if it was to get passed, It's going to go the same route as the Son of Sam law. It's going to become a state decision. And most states are not going to want to be bothered with enforcing it. So in a future video, I'll do, how do we make it a law, a bill become a law, and why is the Son of Sam law failing? But we'll talk about that in another video. But here's the real point. A contract doesn't make something ethical. So even if something skirts the edge of legality, it can still cross a serious moral line. So HIPAA, HIPAA, it's the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. It defines what's lawful. Ethics defines what's right. And when you claim to be media, ethics is not optional. It just isn't. It's essential. You do not monetize someone's private medical history. You just don't do that. You don't weaponize these types of things for clicks or book sales. That's not journalism. That's exploitation. And I'm not talking about Gypsy being exploited, but it also exploits Dee Dee. You know what I mean? It does, whether you want to believe it or not. That's the difference between advocacy and opportunism. And unfortunately, April chose opportunism. Yeah. But let me explain a bit more before we move on to public reception of April's latest book. I do that because it's hardly a book. Now, let's talk about something really important, the legal side of this, because I've seen a lot of people online trying to claim that HIPAA does not apply to April since she's not a medical professional. And technically, they're right. But that's only part of the story. That's oversimplifying a broad array. See, HIPAA applies to what's called covered entities. So that means doctors, hospitals, clinics, insurance companies, and anyone who handles medical data as part of their job, like lawyers' offices that do personal injury. So if you're not one of those people, HIPAA itself might not directly apply to you, but that doesn't mean you can just go around sharing, selling, or posting someone's medical records on the internet. So there are other federal and state laws that protect people's private information. It's called protected health information for a reason. So if a civilian, someone who's not a doctor or a hospital worker, gets a hold of medical records and decides to share or sell them online, that can still get them into a lot of trouble, serious legal trouble. For starters, if those records were stolen, hacked, or obtained without proper authorization, that's a crime. Now, I'm not saying that's what happened here. We know that the records came from Christie. It falls under data theft or unauthorization if the records were obtained illegally. And depending on how it was done, it could also be considered wire fraud. Sorry, guys, I got a bad cough. I can't do anything about it. Then, if that person turns around and sells those records, say behind a paywall or as part of a monetized project like a book, they could face charges for things like identity theft, unlawful use of personal information, or commercial exploitation of private data. It's a real thing. And just so we're clear, when I say selling or profiting, I keep quoting, I'm sorry, that doesn't just mean handing someone a folder of documents for cash. It also includes making those medical records available, again, behind a Patreon paywall, where people have to pay to read them. It includes printing those records in a self-published book and putting that book up for sale. If money is changing hands in any way, if someone is charging a fee to access private medical information, that's commercial use of someone's private records. That's not journalism. That's not storytelling. That's exploitation. And now let's look at another angle, another scenario. What if the records weren't stolen? Let's say that they were given to her voluntarily, as we know they are. That still doesn't make what she did okay. It doesn't. Even if someone gives you medical records, like Christy handed them over, that doesn't automatically give you the right to post them, to distribute them, or sell them, or turn them into a product. The person who shared them, first of all, they might have violated privacy by handing those records over in the first place. In this case, allegedly, Christy, especially if they weren't legally authorized by Gypsy Rose, who was an adult, to do so by express written consent. Verbal consent is not enough, even if it was recorded. So if she just handed those records over without anything signed saying she could do that, she broke a law. And even if the handoff itself wasn't illegal, what came next absolutely crosses ethical lines. The minute those records were put behind a paywall or printed in a book, which we know both of those things happen, it stopped being about truth or justice. It became about money, control, and attention. Just because something wasn't stolen doesn't mean it's yours to sell. And when the information is medical, private, sensitive, deeply personal, the responsibility is even greater. It has to be. Ethics don't stop where the law ends. If you call yourself media, you're supposed to protect people's privacy, not auction it off. So now let's talk about the public reception of this book. What are readers saying? Well, it's not good. Across Amazon, TikTok, and other reader spaces, I couldn't find a single positive review. When a book generates several consistent negative reactions across multiple platforms, it's no longer opinions. It's a pattern of public rejection. Now, I haven't exactly found a mountain of reviews, but I found enough to see people don't like this book. We can talk about the ones I did find, at least a few of them. I'm not cherry picking negativity. 100% of these reviews are negative. I'm documenting a uniform response. Objectivity isn't pretending both sides have equal merit. It's reporting what the evidence overwhelmingly shows. Formatting and presentation. Let's talk about that first. Readers call Cawing Out Truth a dumpster fire. Reports mention missing page numbers, mismatched titles, repeated paragraphs, and pages with only 2 lines printed larger to take up more space. Even the copyright year reads 225. That's not a typo. That is negligence. Structure and readability. That's next. The book swings wildly between play script, FOIA files, parody, and poetry. Character names are bizarre and inconsistent and convoluted. One reviewer said, "It's so disorganized it gives you a headache." AI use and lack of editing. Multiple reviewers say that April admitted to using ChatGPT or Echo to write the book. AI is fine, but it's a tool, and it's a great tool, but it's not a ghostwriter. A responsible author edits and verifies. What readers describe here isn't edited at all. It's not. Whole sections appear copied and pasted without any kind of check through. That's not innovation. That's, again, negligence. Sales practices and false advertising. This had come up too. Early buyers say that the book was first sold as a 900-page complete edition through her Good Wives Network site. They paid and never received it. They didn't receive anything. Then she allegedly broke the book into smaller acts. Act 1 is this one, and resold them. As one reviewer said, "How do you take money for something, never ship it, and then break it into multiple parts for more money?" It's shisty. That's not marketing. That is deception. Ethical and legal concerns. Readers also allege use of unlicensed artwork, lyrics, and characters from Alice in Wonderland and The Wizard of Oz, plus excerpts from Gypsy Rose Blanchard's own memoir, her own writings. If accurate, that's infringement, and even if technically legal, it's ethically indefensible, especially if she's not citing her sources. So Insider Review, allegedly removed. This was Brandy's review that was removed. A detailed review, reportedly removed after April complained, came from someone claiming to have worked with her. I know that that's true. They called the book embarrassing, disorganized, and revenge disguised as advocacy. And it ended, I gave it 1 star for the artwork. ChatGPT did nice work. I screenshot that review when I first read it because I had a sneaking suspicion she would try to have it removed. And yeah, I got it. Screenshot queen. Removing that review fits a clear pattern as well. Erase criticism instead of addressing it. Media Ethics 101. What real journalists are held to. April Johns calls herself media, but journalism isn't about having a microphone. It's about meeting ethical standards. Professional journalism follows 4 pillars. Number 1, seek truth and report it. Verify facts, cite sources, separate news from opinion. 2, minimize harm. Treat subjects, especially victims, with dignity, even if that victim is deceased. In fact, especially if that victim is deceased. 3, act independently. Disclose conflicts of interest. Don't let profit drive the story. 4, be accountable and transparent. Correct mistakes and don't retaliate against critics. By those measures, Cawing Out the Truth fails every test. That's not journalism. That's exploitation dressed up again as advocacy, like Brandy said. Now, for the victim or for herself, April Johns insists that Cawing Out the Truth was written for Dee Dee, for Dee Dee Blanchard. positioning it as a compassionate defense of the victim. But if you actually read it, that claim falls apart immediately. This is completely self-serving. This book isn't about Dee Dee. It's about April. It's about attention, money, and revenge. Remember that part where it said in the title where she was the ones she forgot to mention? She presents herself as Dee Dee's advocate, yet the tone and content make it clear that this is performative advocacy. A performance of empathy meant to look noble while serving her own interest. And there are still people who still buy her BS. It's highly unethical to claim something is for the victim when it's really designed to elevate the person producing it. True advocacy demands empathy, honesty, and integrity, not ego, self-promotion, or payback. If this book were truly for Dee Dee, it would aim to tell her story responsibly, not make a joke out of it, with accuracy and compassion. Instead, it's chaotic, incoherent, and self-serving. Another attempt to profit from tragedy under the banner of justice. So let's not forget, April once convinced the Blanchard family that she was a producer, director, PR expert who could bring their story or Gypsy story to the screen. When they realized that she was none of those things, they walked away. They dropped her. And this book, it's her attempt at a retaliation, her way of clawing back into a story that no longer includes her. But like most revenge projects, it collapses under its own contradictions. It's not advocacy. It's performative. It's performance. And the only person it serves is April. It doesn't even serve Amy, her co-author, who I don't mean to leave her out, but I don't think that she deserves the negativity necessarily. Maybe she does, but it's my opinion she doesn't. I'd honestly be so embarrassed to have my name attached to this project, and I kind of feel bad for her a little bit. I've heard good things about her from good friends of mine, and near as I can tell, she doesn't deserve this. But now on to professionalism and accountability. The pattern is consistent. Again, when readers criticize formatting, she blames Amazon. It's Amazon's fault. It's formatted wrong. Now let's talk about that for a minute. How Amazon KDP formatting really works. No, don't be mean. That excuse doesn't hold up. Stop it. Hey. I'm sorry, the cats are acting up and I'm not starting this whole video over again. So anyway, that excuse doesn't hold up because that's not how Amazon's KDP system works. So when an author self-publishes through KDP, they are fully responsible for formatting their own manuscript before uploading it. So Amazon doesn't fix errors. They don't rearrange pages or reformat anything. It simply prints or converts the exact file that the author provides. KDP even includes a preview tool so the author can review every page before publishing. Margins, fonts, spacing, page numbers, everything. If text is misaligned, paragraphs repeat, or there's an entire page of blank space, those problems come from the author's file, not Amazon's system. Professional authors either learn proper formatting or hire someone who knows how to do it. So when April blamed Amazon for the disastrous formatting of that book, she was really exposing her lack of understanding of her own publishing process and her refusal to take responsibility for her mistakes all the time. So beyond formatting, what's the excuse for everything else that's wrong with it? So even if formatting were the only issue, which it absolutely isn't, that still wouldn't explain the repetition, redundancies, and nonsensical writing that filled this book. Well, it's hardly filled, but you know. Readers consistently report that the same phrases are repeated 30 times, that sentences contradict each other, and that entire pages contain incoherent dialogue or misplaced poetry.
Just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
That's not a formatting problem. That's a writing problem. Nor can Amazon be blamed for the book's ethical failures, the alleged use of other people's work without attribution, the exploitation of private information, and the false claim that the book was for DD Blanchard, because it wasn't. What's worse is that the structure of this book makes it logically impossible to track or credit sources properly. Page numbers are missing, scene numbers are inconsistent, and content is repeated across different sections with no clear reference points at all. If you can't tell where one part ends and another begins, or what material came from where, you can't ethically and properly cite or credit anyone, even if you wanted to. That means that any borrowed material, intentional or not, becomes untraceable, and that kind of structural chaos doesn't just look unprofessional. It erases accountability. So, while April can try to pin technical issues on Amazon, the truth is that the problems run much deeper. They reveal a pattern of deflection, irresponsibility, and a total disregard for transparency that no amount of formatting could fix. When ethics are questioned, critics become haters, right? When reviews appear, she tries to have them removed. That's not accountability. That's not. That's avoidance. Professionals own mistakes. They don't bury them. Credibility isn't Brandon, it's integrity. And integrity can't be manufactured. Not with AI, not with hashtags, and not with censorship. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone. What separates amateurs from professionals is how they respond to those mistakes, how they respond to the people that point them out when those mistakes are exposed. April Johns had the chance to correct errors, take responsibility, and show growth. Instead, she doubled down. This book isn't just poorly written. It's a case study in ego over ethics. It's what happens when truth-telling becomes a brand instead of a belief. If you truly care about truth, start by being honest with yourself. This book is actually an insult to other writers, whether self-published or not. It's an insult to everyone that creates content on Gypsy Rose, whether it's pro or anti-Gypsy. This book is an insult to everybody. And she thought that she really ate with it. But like, if she's trying to make some kind of jokes or something against Gypsy, it fell totally flat. And it's just, I'm sorry, it's honestly the worst thing I ever read. And that includes the first volume of that ridiculous transcript book that I talked about, I think it was last year. So yeah, it's dismal. It's dismal. And I'm not being judgmental. It's a review of a book. So that's my review. Professional. It's that's my review and professional assessment of Cawing Out the Truth. If you've read it or followed this case at all, feel free to drop your thoughts in the comments. If you're a nasty ass, though, you'll be blocked because I'm not playing that. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, go watch replay Brandy's 2 live streams she did on it. I will try to remember to link them into the About section. And I will talk to everyone later. Bye.